That was bad. That was very, very bad. That was disheartening, disgusting, not a lot of positive traction. And I was even going to start off talking about officiating, but with the way the fourth quarter went, I can't. It's so much bad. Out in the Palmetto Bowl, final score 28-14. Clemson, for the sixth straight time, goes into Williams-Brice Stadium and gets the win over the Gamecocks. And we have got a lot to discuss, primarily about where does South Carolina go going into the offseason. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered Postgame Show. It's Cole Thompson. Like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football, we talk war chicken football, and we talk SEC football daily. Download the podcast version of the show where we get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link right here in the description, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. As always, we are proudly brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Go visit FanDuel.com/SECU to get started with $300 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Sign up today at FanDuel.com/SECU. South Carolina lost this football game. Bad officiating, to say the least. I will immediately start there just so we can go ahead and put the point out. What a horrendous, disgustingly pathetic excuse of an officiating staff on countless occasions. The interception in the end zone was a joke. Absolute joke. You can see it clear as day that should have been an easy drop pass. And unfortunately, the guys from the ACC said, nope, it wasn't an interception. So we're going to throw that one against LaNorris Sellers. That really didn't count. There were a couple of other really bad missed calls. There was a third down stop, and they were like at 4th and 1, less than a foot. And it should have been a 15-yard gain because there was a clear face mask call that they immediately missed on. Just like so many little things that went against South Carolina on multiple instances that maybe wouldn't have put them in the end zone, but at least would have given them a second opportunity. And I understand the frustration, especially when it comes to South Carolina fans, because this is not the first time that officiating has dictated the narrative of the game. LSU last season, Nicky Manwari, the touchdown should have counted. Everyone knows the touchdown should have counted. But at the same time, we also got to look at what we're talking about when it comes to how many times they've been screwed over in other moments this season and last season too, because of really bad officiating. And this is something the ACC, college football in general, are going to have to work upon. But now that we throw that out there, let's talk about what happened in the fourth quarter. We'll start with Clemson. Clemson's defense bailed them out of trouble. Offensively, they didn't have a great day whatsoever. You had one bad interception by Kate Klubnik. You were only giving up 3.7 yards on the ground. They just did enough to put themselves in a position to where they could strike and at least near find the end zone, and they capitalized, and that really was it. They got into field goal range. They kicked a pair of field goals. They went up by 6, and they said, here, let's see if you can do anything offensively, and South Carolina couldn't. They won in the 3 most important areas. They won with time of possession. Clemson owned that category, if I'm not mistaken. Final time of possession was 38 versus 21 minutes. They won on third down execution. They were 7-17. South Carolina was 1 of 11. They didn't outgain South Carolina, but they had fewer penalties and they had fewer turnovers, 4 versus 1. You add all that together, it ended up being a recipe to where, hey, what Clemson did was, they're going to play the version of football that says, we're going to let you make the mental mistakes. When you do that, then we're going to capitalize off it. And they did. Bad interception on the fourth quarter. You should have had your hands on the football, Nick Harbor. That's as clear as day. You should have made the catch. That led to a pick 6. You had the fumble in the fourth quarter. That nearly led to another scoring drive, and they could have been up 35-0. And they just allowed you to go ahead and have the mental issues. All right, now we're off with that. So Clemson, they're going to go 7-5. Very underwhelming season out in the upstate. Again, this is a team that many people thought was supposed to get called for. They were supposed to get called for a college football playoff bid. They were supposed to be the favorite to go to win the ACC. They're going to go to the Sun Bowl. They're going to go to the Gasparilla Bowl, and it'll be a lost season. But Dabo Swinney for the 6th time in the last decade, the 6th time in his tenure, can say he's won in South Carolina. It really be. All right, so now we're done with that. Let's move on over now to South Carolina. Good God. Today's performance was probably the epitome of what was South Carolina football this year, relying too heavily on explosive plays and bad play designs at the worst times possible. Like, quite literally, it felt so disingenuous for how Shane Beamer and company decided to show on up today. Whether it was, that you just need to get a dink and dunk pass off right into the middle of the flats to a Jaden Sellers or to a Van Jacobs and just create a first down opportunity. That's it. mean, that's all you had to say. But no, instead you want to go with the deep shots down the field. Instead, you want to put yourself in the position of where, hey, we're going to let it fly 50 yards and try to connect with Nick Harbor. Like, who's calling the offense at this point? It just was constant mistake after worst time. And the inability to understand when you had conservative play calling versus the aggressive play calling on both sides. I mean, quite literally, it just was pathetic on so many different instances. And defensively, again, you had some good stops. You actually played up to your par for, I think, most part. You shut down basically the rushing attack. You had Adam Randall get over 100 yards, but he also had to carry the football 24 times to get there. You didn't allow them into the end zone when it came to the passing game. Kate Klubnik get intercepted. Just bad, ill-advised plays offensively. And again, you went up against a pretty good pass rush, and guess what happened? They ate after you. I mean, quite literally, go back and look at this game plan. They had 5 sacks on the day. So just add that to the tally marker of things that have gone against you this entire season. So when you can't protect your quarterback and when you can't run the football efficiently, you're at a point of where you have to be able to throw it. And even still, the play design should be try to gain first downs and keep momentum and the time possession in your favor. Not go for the jugular and drop the haymaker 50 yards down the field. And that was your game plan for the day. And it came back to bite you in the ass on countless occasions. And ultimately, then you started to have to play with more up-tempo and you rush throws and wide receivers were making bad plays. Nick Harbor is such a hit and miss at times because when he is on point, he may be the most dangerous man with a football in his hands because of that straight line speed. Then he's dropping an interception right into the hands of a defensive back who runs it back for a pick six and then fumbles the football to give the ball at midfield when clearly you have enough time to be able to get downfield, get into the end zone, and make this a one-possession game, get the ball back, and hopefully with the 2-minute timeout, keep this thing interesting. Just so many mistakes by players that you're supposed to trust. And I'm not going to let LaNorris Sellers off the hook. Yeah, he had 368 passing yards today. You had 2 wide receivers go for over 100 yards. Van Jacobs and Nick Harbor averaged over 19 yards a play. You couldn't run the football. And you still made dumb bonehead decisions when it came to several passes. Like little things like that go such a long way. And I get it. You were down multiple players on the defensive side, a couple of injuries stockpiled on up, but that's not a good enough excuse. Your defense did its job for a majority of the game. I mean, quite literally, if you're holding them in the red zone to 2 field goals and only giving up 6 points, I consider that a win. And afterwards, when you look back at the numbers and what they say, and you look back at the very beginning of the game, it was 14 to 10. And then all you gave up was 3 field goals. I mean, 2 field goals. That was it. You were able to get the job done for the most part defensively. Your offense just had no direction. And that goes back to what we have with coaching, and that goes from incompetence with leadership and a lot of things that were going on behind these doors. That was the story of Clemson. I mean, that was South Carolina football this past year. So we're done with South Carolina. They went 4-8. In my opinion, they were the most disappointing team in the SEC from my expectations because I had them going 9-3. I thought this team would be better than advertised. And I wanted to believe that Shane Beamer, when he said in the offseason that they didn't need to go out in the portal and add in certain position groups because they felt confident on where they were with the development of talent and the young up-and-comers that were going to flourish, they would hit. Well, it was a swing and a miss. And because of that, you ended up losing multiple games in unheralded fashion. You blew the biggest lead in college football history to create the biggest comeback by Texas A&M football, and you close out the year with only 1 win against a G5 team that is not even going to be bowl eligible. And that's the story of South Carolina this year. That's kind of it. So where do you go from here? Well, Shane Beamer apparently told the SEC Network broadcast that he is going to be making the tough decisions on how to turn this team from being a lowly roster in the SEC to a college football playoff contender. That means 3 things. Number 1, he is going to change the staff up entirely. That means that Clayton White might not be back next year. That means that Sean Elliott, who was promoted to the offensive line coach, may not be back next year. That means several of his friends and people connected to South Carolina may be on the outside looking in. And to be completely transparent, this is what Shane Beamer has to do. And I understand that there's a lot of South Carolina people. I am not from South Carolina, so I understand that I am not the person to be speaking on the volume of what you have to do at a place like South Carolina. But if you want to win, if you're Shane Beamer, you got to make changes. You do. And you got to be able to swing for guys who you don't have relationships with, you don't have abilities to build a rapport with, and that you could say they were in your wedding or anything like that. you got to go start fresh. You have to be able to go bring in an outside perspective to say, we need to fix this. So there are three main hires that he has got to bring in this offseason that are going to fix the team. Number one, an offensive coordinator. You can't keep running the same stuff that you've been running, whether that be with the interim guy or whether that be with Shane Beamer running the show. You got to bring in an outside name. I don't know which direction you go. I know that Baker from ECU is one that's going to be considered. I know that potentially North Texas OC could be in the running. There's a couple of other people that could be in the running, but you got to go and make an outside hire. I think that Utah's offense coordinator also has gotten mentioned for the job. Those are probably going to be your top candidates. They have to bring somebody who is from an outsider's perspective that can look blindly at this offense and say, here's where you sucked. Here's where you were wrong. Here's what was terrible. Here's what you need to go ahead and figure out. Number two, you got to bring a new offensive line coach. I get it. You can have Sean Elliott on the staff if you want, but I cannot trust him to be my offensive line coach. I need to bring in a fresh new face, and I would be throwing a lot of money at Sam Pittman and see if he wants to come back into coaching. Like I would. That would be the biggest upgrade, in my opinion, possible that you could make. If not him, you're going to have to steal and you're going to have to pay a pretty hefty penny from some other team in the SEC to bolster up your trenches. It doesn't matter if you have LaNorris Sellers back next year. It doesn't matter if you bring in Landon Duckworth. It doesn't matter if you go with Aaron Nolan next season. Whoever is your quarterback, they will get killed behind the current status of this offensive line. They just will. And it's not going to get better simply because if you say, oh, but we bring in new recruits and we have a full year with Sean Elliott at the helm. You got to bring in a fresh new voice. And number three, and probably the biggest one for me, you've got to bring in a GM that's going to allow you to be able to make the necessary moves in the transfer portal so that way you are not being outbid by other teams. So if you add all three of those hires, the development of player personnel, I also would not mention if you bring in a new strength and conditioning coordinator, because I'll be completely honest, that offensive line was getting bullied this season. That shows it was a weakness in the strength room, in the locker room, in all those areas. You got to get better with the strength and conditioning stuff. So really 4 hires that you have got to make this offseason if you're Shane Beamer. Number 2, you got to be aggressive in the portal. You got to be very aggressive in the portal. And I mean at every single position. That includes players that could be leaving your school that you think are non-negotiables to come back in. We'll talk about that in a minute. You got to bring in more offensive linemen. And I mean, you got to go swing big. You don't need to go for the G5 level dudes. You need to go for guys from Missouri, guys from Penn State, Illinois, Texas, Florida State, programs that are known prominence of schools that are watching to see their growth and their maturity. You got to go after them. That is priority number 1. Number 2, you got to go ahead and bring in some more wide receivers. I get it. You have some young players that you believe in, but I don't know if Nick Harbour is going to be back next year. I don't know if you're going to see LaNorris Sellers back next year. I can tell you what, you're not going to have back Jordan Dingle at tight end, and you're going to lose some guys to the portal. You are. I don't know if it's going to be just Jaden Sellers, who I think won't be leaving anytime soon. I don't know if it'll be like a Brian Rowe or a Donovan Murphy or a Malik Clark. So you got to bring in some veteran wide receivers. The thing that killed me this entire offseason, and I thought was a major problem for South Carolina, was believing going into this season that you were going to be fine at the wide receiver spot just because of you had guys you liked. You didn't have veteran help. I thought that was the biggest malpractice of all of Shane Beamer's moves and comments that he made this offseason. So you got to bring in more wide receiver help. You got to go after a top-tier running back, throw whatever money you can at whoever is the name. Mekhi Hughes is going to be one that hits the portal when the season ends. Dylan Edwards from Kansas State's hitting the portal. You got to make a ploy for both of them. You got to be able to say that these are 2 guys that you want to at least make a play for, and maybe 2 or 3 other names that you know could be made available at some point. But you got to fix your running back room, and I think that you got to continuously bring in more defensive backs. Like Bakari Swain is going to be starting for you next year. You may end up losing a few guys to the portal or the draft, but I still think that you need to go after some veteran help that can shore up the safety spot and can shore up the cornerback spot. Now, the third question. You have to have a heart-to-heart conversation on what you want for your team moving forward. Does that include LaNorris Sellers? Does LaNorris Sellers want to be back next season? I will be the first to say, as of right now, and I've talked to a lot of people around the NFL circles, there is still a possibility that because of the intangibles that Sellers has and the fact that we saw growth last season, they believe that he could still be a first-round pick. So he may end up going to the pros. He may end up getting paid a lot more money on the open market. Again, there is a rumor that Dylan Raiola, Sam Levitt from Arizona State, both going to enter the transfer portal. There is one school that points on out. It is Miami. Miami is a quarterback transfer portal destination at this point, and it feels like that's not going to go away anytime soon. if Shannon Dawson stays on staff and he ends up becoming the OC next year still, I believe that there will be a ploy for LaNorris Sellers because of his intangibles. And they will try to run it back another season. And then you have to have that hard conversation. Do you believe that LaNorris Sellers has reached its peak with you? And do you want to go in a different direction? And if you don't want to go in a different direction, that's fine. But you got to figure out a way to guarantee that his leadership is going to show on up, number one. And number two, you are going to get more growth from him in terms of his demand of the pocket. He's also got to have a say in what you want in the offense coordinator position. He's also got to be able to have a say in what you want in terms of wide receivers. And everyone has to be on the same page. That's priority number one. Then you got to go ahead and make the same offer, I think, to Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart cannot be a name that you can afford to lose on the open market. He will get paid by somebody. Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss. I guarantee that Tennessee would love to have him. Multiple teams in the Big Ten would go after him. You got to figure out a way to keep him around. I do believe that he is one of those foundational pieces that you cannot afford to let go. I think Jaden Sellers is one too, if I'm being honest. He showed me today, and he showed me over the last few weeks, he can really be a difference maker at wide receiver. He's going to finish the season, if I'm not mistaken, with just over 300 receiving yards. So again, it's a good building block right now. I would love to have him back on the squad. I also think that you have to keep a couple ploys for certain linebackers. Definitely, I think that you got to look at Justin Okoronkwo and say, that's a dude that we cannot afford to watch him leave. We got to make sure that he stays and he's our Debo Williams of next season. He is our leading force in the middle of the trenches. And then you got to ask yourself, who are some other players that you can be afforded to lock on up, or that teams that you need to go ahead and let go of, and you can let them go hit that open market. But you got to make changes. I mean, like, that's just it. You can't go from being a season of having just all these sky-high expectations of college football playoff aspirations and hitting the portal and doing a lot of good things last season to then going 4-8 and not getting a win over a Power 4 team in over 2 months. Like, you can't just say we're going to run it back and everything will be fine. It's not the way it works. It's not going to happen that way. And I think this is the biggest reality check for Shane Beamer, that I need to change the way that I coach if I want to be here long-term. Because I'll tell you what, South Carolina fans, in my humble opinion, are some of the best in college football, because win or lose, trying times, triumphant times, dire times, they show on up to Willie B and they pack the place on out because they are true to their fandom. And it is a disservice to the program and to the fan base to constantly find itself being neglected with careless missed opportunities, bad execution, horrendous leadership, and the inability to stop shooting yourself in the foot. It's a disservice to the fan base entirely. And so now you got to ask yourself, what are the changes that we have got to make so this way it doesn't happen again? Let's get to your questions and comments before we get on out of here. We are very jam-packed today when it comes to shows. Need one big offseason in Columbia. You need a massive offseason in Columbia. I'm going to start here. You need a massive offseason in Columbia. Offensive line, coordinators, position coaches, complete and total change when it comes to the personnel groups, wide receivers. You got to go really big. I think that you're talking about the officiating. Officiating was bad. Like, officiating was really bad. And if they would have lost the game 20-14, we would have just been rambling for 25 minutes on that, because of it was so horrendous with the careless missed calls and the flagrant disillusion of what we see from mistakes that were on the field. Just countless time after time after time. Two-face mess not called. PI in the end zone, not INT in the end zone. Nothing missed, just not called. No, they were missed, Stacey. That's the problem. They were missed. Nobody called them. We all saw it, but they were missed. That's just it. Surely some players have already made it known they were entering. Maybe I'm wrong here. Probably, Chris. Probably they made it known. I think that Shane Beamer's had some conversations and said, this is your last game. Best of luck in your future endeavors. We're not going to be able to have you here. Sellers is still not getting through his progression well enough. Well, Stacey, it's a two-way street here. Partially, we could say that that is on the offensive line, and partially we could say that that's on Sellers and the inability to have a good offensive coordinator around him. Mike Shula was not the answer. Clearly, what you did by doing the internal promotion is not the answer. So you got to hit reset completely all the way around. Beamer ain't the guy, period. I'm not ready to give up on Shane Beamer yet, but I'm also not going to sit here and say, if you're done believing in Shane Beamer, you're wrong. Because why would you be? It was once again a horrendous performance, headlined by bad leadership at the top in a year filled with multiple miscues at the worst ill-advised times and bad play designs at the worst opportune moments. I can't sit here and act like that you're wrong to have that opinion. Not even a little bit. Personally, Shimber has lost the fan base. Yeah, he has. I've seen it. You can tell right now that there are plenty of people that currently bleed with the garnet and black, and they say, nope, I'm done. He can come back next year, but my money's not going to this program. I'm not giving another cent. I'm not giving another dime to Willie B, to the future of the Gamecock program until we see him leave. That's just it. And I can't argue with you on that. I believe that he's gotten himself a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because of what he's been able to accomplish up to this point. But it's up to this point. That's all I can say. I can't go much further than that. Why would we want Sellers to come on back? Because he may end up being the best option for you. I mean, unless you think that Landon Duckworth or Aaron Nolan's going to come on in and be a better fit for the offensive coordinator, which right now, again, you still have to make a hire for the offensive coordinator. There's multiple names, the Utah OC, ECU's OC, John David Baker, probably a few more out there that we could throw on in. They're all going to be rumored to go here. I've already said my pick. My pick last year was Rod Edsall from South Alabama working with Gio Lopez. I would love to see him get the job again. That, again, is just my humble opinion on the situation. Doesn't really factor into anything right here, but I'm just saying in general, that's what I would like to see happen. But if the offensive coordinator doesn't fit with LaNorris Sellers, then yeah, you make that move. But outside of that, I still think that he provides the best opportunity for you to be successful. Again, he had over 300 passing yards today. He found the end zone twice. He also had 3 turnovers, and they were bad. They were very, 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 very bad at the worst time. Gamecocks are now 7-20 in their last 27 hand-to-game games against it. Poor little Superman. I don't even know what you're talking about, Timmy. Kids graduating high school this year, only seeing South Carolina win twice that time. Cox have always been, as always, and will be mediocre. Right now, it feels that way. It does. I mean, there's really not much more you can say on that. One great season followed up by one crappy season. And that kind of feels like the norm. Like, do any of you guys remember the World Series, the Believe in era with the San Francisco Giants? One year they'd win the World Series. The next year they'd finish like 3rd in the division. And then they win the World Series and they finish like 4th in the division. And they win the World Series and they won 3 in even years. And they started the term Believe in. That's kind of like South Carolina with Shane Beamer at the helm. They went from 6-6 in year 1 to breaking on out and having back-to-back wins over Clemson and Tennessee to close out the year on a high, to going 5-7 to being a college football playoff-bound roster. And yes, I do believe that South Carolina should have been in the playoff last year. They absolutely should have, but unfortunately they couldn't. And then this year, again, they go right back to being a 4-8 team. So next year, what that would translate to is that we should see South Carolina make a run with the right moves in the portal, with upgrades on the coaching staff, with more development of talent, be in the conversation for a college football playoff hunt if that's the way we're going. But we're running out of time to be able to say that that's good enough. Because at some point, you don't want to have this roller coaster of, are we good? Are we not? Are we bad? Are we good? Are we not? You just want to eventually say, we're good and we're good being steady. That's where we're coming to at this one. Hey, what's up, Spurs? Cole, we will win the Natty next year. Keep Sellers, Bros, Stewart, and Harvard get to work. Well, number one, Spurs, I'll tell you, you got to ask yourself, is Sellers going to go pro? I don't think he will, but then you have to ask yourself, does he take more money in the portal? That could be an interesting conversation. Harbor's another one. Does Harbor want to come back for another year, or does he want to go pro? Because he's probably still going to be a second-round pick with how much athletic ability he has. He will convince a team. Every year you see it. The athletic specimens that we put on clinics down in the Underwear Olympics known as the Combine somehow boost up draft boards, and they find themselves in the first-round chatter. Every single year we see it happen. And that might be Harbor. Now, Sellers is 100%. Jaden Sellers, I think, will be back next year. Unless, for some reason, he is a package deal along with LaNorris. I think Dylan Stewart will be back next season. He'll be your foundation on the defensive side. But I'm not ready to say national championship. I will say that he probably is, that you probably are looking at more so a 10-2 season, hopefully in the college football playoff. Do you think that the only reason Beamer is coming back is his relationship with Sellers? No, I don't. I think that partially the reason he's coming back is he has the most wins by a South Carolina coach in his first 4 years. And he also has multiple ranked wins over Tennessee and Clemson in the rivalry matchup. And because of that, they want to give him one more shot. I think that's the reason. If he went like 7-5 and 7-5 and then 9-3 and then 7-5 and then 5-7 and then 7-5 and then 4-8, I think he would be out of a job. I think it's because of he's been able to get you to 8-4 and then 9-3 and then be ranked for the first time and to stay ranked and to beat ranked opponents on the regular. I think that that's the reason why you're going to give him another stop. Harbor dropped 3 rounds today. Yeah, he did in terms of just today. But then when you go to the combine and he tests really well, and it's pro day, he tests really well, he jumps all the way right back up. There's issues, but coaching is definitely the biggest problem. Leadership is, Alex. Quite literally leadership. And it starts with Shane Beamer, and it trickles all the way down to the water room, to the water boy, to the towel assistant, all those things that really matter. And that was really the difference on the field today, was the leadership that was head on in from coaching to players to assistant coaches to execution on the field. That's just kind of the bottom line. And it was terrible. And unfortunately, one team showed up in the second half, and there were too many self-inflicted wounds. That was a full-on conversation led by what we saw that went wrong in favor of South Carolina today. It comes down to whether Coach Beamer can do what he's able to and keep his NFL talent on the team another year to finish the job. What Dabo was able to do, Spur, you're right, but it costs money. I'll just tell you right now, it costs money. Part of the reason why all those players that we saw back from Clemson last year, it was because of it cost money. Was the issue, is that they were paid to come on back. Is South Carolina going to open up the checkbook for the NIL deals and say, here's what we will pay you to not go pro? Here's what we will pay you to stick around for another season. I think it's worth it, personally, because there's nothing like having a good foundation in place. But I'm not the head of NIL for Clemson. I'm not on the booster staff. I'm not in these meetings and having conversations on what we are willing to spend with Shane Beamer as our coach. Because if it all trickles and falls apart, then we have to pay a massive buyout. I'm not doing that. But I would pay to keep LaNorris Sellers around. I would pay to keep Dylan Stewart around. I would pay to keep Nick Harbor back for another season. And then Jaden Sellers, and then a few other players that certainly I think could be back available. One of the Kilgores, definitely. So, again, there's ways to do it. Sellers, Harbor, and Stewart all guard. Can you blame them? I don't think that they're all gone at all. I think that they're definitely looking at their options. I think Stewart is the one who is probably the most likely to come back of the three. I would then say probably LaNorris Sellers, and then Nick Harbor, I think, goes pro. I think that's just kind of where we are. Clemson refs were brutal. Steven, they were brutal. They sucked. It was terrible. That wasn't the only reason why South Carolina lost today, and I want to make that abundantly clear. You can't blame it all on officiating. Officiating didn't throw that pick six. Officiating didn't have that fumble by Nick Harbor in the open field. Officiating didn't miss on fourth down conversions. That's just what it is. So, again, it was bad, but there were so many self-inflicted wounds by South Carolina that didn't show up as well. Love them Gamecocks, but it's hard right now. It is hard. It's very hard to be a South Carolina fan because if you know that every single time you are looking at the conversation of, are we there or are we not? Are we there or are we not? Well, unfortunately, you're at a point of where you're tired of not having a good understanding of who you are as a team. You constantly are bouncing back and forth from being a team that we believe maybe is at the turn of the corner to regression setting on in because of the loss of talent because of the NFL draft. And at some point, you want to get off the wagon and you just want to have continuity. And right now, the continuity feels like it's more so leaning towards the 2 years of 8-4 and 9-3 were the outliers, and this is who South Carolina is. It could change very well next season, but I don't think it can. I don't think Harbor has shown enough to make it in the NFL. And Spur, it's really not up to you. It's up to him. If he thinks that he's getting told he's going to go in the second round and he can get paid $4 million, he's going to take it. I can't call. I know you're talking about the refs. Spur, Nick Harbor drops an easy interception. Drops an easy pass that turns to a pick six. That's not on officiating. Nick Harbor fumbles the football in the open field. Not on officiating. LaNorris Sellers throws into double coverage on a fourth down drive. That's not officiating. That's just kind of it. You can blame whatever you want, but that's just kind of the bottom line. We're going to end the live stream in a minute, guys. Why do you think they run a pro-style offense with Sellers as an RPO quarterback? I think that's the biggest issue in my opinion. Well, I think the first thing that was they brought Mike Shula in as the full-time offense coordinator because of the comparisons to Cam Newton when he was running the offense for the Carolina Panthers. And so they switched up the offense because they figured if we run an offensive style that emulates what worked in Carolina in 2015, even though he is not Cam Newton, we should be able to have some results. Good trusting the run game, design quarterback runs that would allow us to be able to utilize his legs a little bit more, deep shots down the field to wide receivers that we know have great straight line speed. And the other factor that you have to mention that was really important here is in Carolina that year, they had an offensive line. And then slowly toward the season's end, the offensive line was getting banged on up and they were dealing with multiple issues and it just felt like nothing was going their way. So that's why they collapsed in the Super Bowl. So that's just it. There were terrible offensive line play the entire year. And so when you have a bad offensive line, there's really not much else you can do with it. Just there isn't. I wish I could say that, but there probably isn't. 3-man rush, numerous sacks, third times. Why did you show pass in the end zone? Maybe it was the most important drive of the game. Did he try to quit? Anyone? I think he got hurt and then he just was listed out for the rest of the game. It'll be really interesting to see what his status is long term. Okay, we're going to end the live stream here. I want to catch up on what happens in multiple games because we have 2 other teams competing for an SEC representation in the college football playoff with Vanderbilt and with Oklahoma. So before we get on out of here, let me tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/SECU is the perfect place to sign on up today. Go win $300 in bonus bets when you cash in on your first $5 bet. It's very simple. The app is free, easy to use, or the website FanDuel.com/SECU. Same game parlays, player props, whatever tickles your fancy. Now is the perfect time to sign it up. FanDuel.com/SECU. Betting partner of not only SEC Unfiltered, but also the NBA. Final score in the Palmetto Bowl, 28-14. Unfortunately for South Carolina, actually I'll say fortunately for South Carolina, the season has come to an end. And maybe at this point, just maybe, things will change for the better. Trust Shane Beamer, figure out what happens this offseason, and hopefully we're talking more so like we were in 2024, in 2026 about the Gamecocks. But at least we can say the season's finally come to an end. I'll talk to you guys after the matchup in Knoxville and also after the one in Norman. Peace.